Namaste. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Mastering Public Procurement. Let me first of all thank all of you for very good response to this video channel, and I thank all of you for subscribing and liking the channel. Today we are going to cover procurement of non-consultancy services. What we will not cover in this video is the generic public procurement topics which will be available in my other videos on this. Before we start, let us see the importance of non-consultancy services, why they are becoming more and more important. Government provide a variety of facilities to their citizens: civic amenities, infrastructure, law and order, defense, banking facility, transportation, etc. Global trend is to outsource most of these public facilities. This is to ensure that there is a minimum government organization and maximum governance. Similarly, many other categories of procurement can be easily procured as a service. Take an example of the air conditioning in a building. You can buy air conditioning equipment, or you can outsource it to a company and ask them that they bring their own equipment, provide a certain level of comfort, and they will be given per month. So this becomes a service instead of goods. Similarly, we all know that software can be purchased as a service rather than buying outright software. It is because of these things that non-consultancy services is the next gold rush. Many developed countries have already become service economies. However, the procedures for procurement of non-consultancy service are quite sketchy, and there is no standard bidding documents till date in India for non-consultancy service. There are many challenges in procurement of non-consultancy service because each service is to be procured as per different tender document, as per different type of contracts, etc. We'll see the details later. Finance Ministry in India in October 2021 came out with customizable model tender docs for non-consultancy service. This will go a long way in allowing more and more purchases of non-consultancy services as should be. Let us understand the characteristics of non-consultancy services. Non-consultancy services are defined by exclusion that it is not a consultancy service, it is not a goods services or a goods item, nor is it is a work. So this is the way non-consultancy services are identified by exclusion. Non-consultancy services is procurement of routine, repetitive, intangible outputs which require physical or non-intellectual and using established methodology. The outcomes of these services and the methodology do not vary from service provider to service. On the other hand, compare it with consultancies where we are procuring creative and non-repetitive intangible outputs requiring intellectual professional using tailor-made method. The outcomes and the methodology vary from consultant. Same job given consultant will be done in a different way by one consultant and in a different way by the other, and the outcomes may also vary. So this is the difference between non-consultancy services and because of this there is a wide variance in the way they are procured and they are. Non-consultancy services can be of two types. One is the outsourcing of service. That means we engage an outside agency on a sustained long-term basis, usually more than 1 year, for services which were traditionally hitherto done in-house. On the other hand, there are standalone services procurement in which we engage a service provider on a short-term basis, usually less than 1 year on a non-divisions may be not very cut and dried. Suppose you buy standalone service 11 months, it does not become. The same thing we are going to put up in a graphic way. Either we are buying physical inputs or we have intellectual into the service. On the horizontal axis, either we have standard outputs or we have creative outputs on the left. Let us remove these arrows and we will find that in this corner where predominantly creative outputs are generated by using predominantly intellectual input, then it is NC services. And on the bottom triangle where there are predominantly physical and standard out, it's a services. Examples of services are in logistics in travel, transportation, taxi services, hospitality, etc. Or they can be technical process like maintenance, drilling, surveys, aerial photography, etc. Or testing and investigation or use of information tech. Or they can be HRD processes like training or recruitment. It can be management processes like market advertising, event management, legal or taxation, accounting, auditing, scrap, and even procurement or large number of services are involved in facility management, offices and factories. They can include security, escorting, access control, etc., horticulture, housekeeping, or office services like document. So you can see there is a wide variety of services which can come under the non-consultancy. Similar to this wide variety of services, there are different types of service. Based on what type of service providers we are targeting, we'll have to take a decision whether we allow all of them to compete together or a level playing will have to be given. For example, there may be commercial firms who are doing services, or there may be non-commercial institutions like government department, semi-government department, university, or professional institutions like Indian Institutes of Materials Management, or there may be NGO. There may be even individual service providers either working in private sector or serving or retired government, public. In non-consultancy service, unlike consultancy, consortiums or joint ventures are normally not allowed because they are not required by the very simpler nature of service. If commercial and non-commercial compete against one another, the commercial firms are not having a level playing because the prices quoted by non-institution will not have profit elements or very rigorous pricing. So you have to take a call on whether you can allow them on the same. A very important part of non-consultancy services complex is the types of contract or BOQ procurement of these services. How do we classify them? It is by the way you will price these services. Either you can measure the output of the service that you are getting by measuring the amount of services or the volume of services, or you can measure the input which has gone into these services by way of personnel, equipment, materials, and miscellaneous. So one way is output admeasurement, which is called unit rate, a type of contract in which the estimated volume of service in units is given and the contract period is mentioned over which cured, and the rates per unit of the output of service is sought for and the contract is based on that unit, that rates per unit. It can be an outsourcing contract for long period of contract like rate contract or on-call, or it can be standalone definite delivery for a specific volume of input admeasurement called time-based services are usually long-term retainership over a longer period. It is used wherever it is difficult to quantify the inputs, scope or duration of the services. You want a on-call service. In this, we indicate the frequency, duration of service required per month over a contract period, and the rates and quantum of inputs are quoted by the bidder. For example, number of personnel, different types of personnel, various equipment which are to be deployed, the materials which will be per month, etc., and miscellaneous cost can be one-time cost per month are quoted. And monthly payments are done on the basis of the quantum of input used during the month as admeasured by the buyer. Lesser used type of contracts is the lump sum or firm and fixed price, where the output is quite fixed and clear in scope and the period of requirement is very clear. Lump sum rates are quoted by the bidder and intermediate payments to out. In this type of contract, we may ask the bidder to quote for personnel, equipment and materials separate so that in case there is variation, that variation price. Very rarely we also use percentage rate contracts, percentage rate types of contracts in which which is based on value of transaction, and it is called success fee type. It is used for items where fixed and clear scope is there and the estimate of the value of transaction very clear. The bidder quotes a percentage over the value of transaction, which can be with or without some fixed cost, but similarly in this case we can ask for personal equipment and material schedules for use during the very. This type of contracts are used for procurement services or testing of materials or for scrap. Lump sum contracts are used, for example, operation of firefighting equipment in a factory. So per month cost is asked for in this type. The procurement of services process is on analogy of other categories of procurement quite similar. Let us see the variations are there. Instead of an indent in a goods procurement which is signed by the user and given to the procurement department laying down the quantity, estimated cost and budgetary clearance, a concept paper or purchase proposal is prepared in which we give justification for the services and the budgetary availability. We'll come to the details of in further slide. When this is given a in principle approval, we can go ahead and make a detailed services and schedules which gives the breakup of activity, their description, timelines, cost, service level agreement, KPIs, and final administrative and budgetary approval. This is similar to terms of reference consultancy or scope of works. The next step is the procurement planning, which involves deciding which type of contract you will see, whether it will be a unit rate or the time based or lump sum percentage contract, and then we will decide which type of bidding system either it will be single stage or single bid or two bid system, and mode of procurement, whether it e-procurement, whether it open tender, limited tender. The next stage is the bidding, selection and award of the contract, which is quite similar to other category procurement. We will not go into detail in this video. You can refer to other videos for specifics of bidding, selection and award. Finally, the contract involves execution and closure of the contract, is principally similar to contract management in other categories, but there are special unique features. We'll discuss only the unique video, and for rest of the contract management you can access other videos. As we said, the first step is preparation of concept paper or the procurement proposal. This lays out first of all the purpose and object, which states what is the background of what is the background of procuring this service, what is the context in procured, what is the description, what are the main activity, and what is the purpose and objective of getting this services procured, and how does it sync with the corporate of what is the budget required. So this is equivalent to indent in the goods procurement. A in principle approval is to be given to this concept paper. The second part of this concept paper is the services outcomes. What is the scope of this? What is the quantum? What are the quality required? What is the total outcomes or output? And what will be the breakup of various finer breakup of the activity involved in it, what will be the time frame, what will be the estimated cost of. We can just focus on the difference between outcomes. We have talked of outcomes and output. I'll give you an example. If we give a works contract for making a bridge across a river connecting two villages, so the bridge is constructed, the output is the bridge. The bridge is the output of the works contract, but outcome is the traffic which goes, the connectivity that the villages will get, the increase in the economic activity in the villages due to this bridge is the outcome of this. So let us understand the difference between outcomes and outputs. Then third aspect of the concept paper is the justification for the procurement. We have to analyze the in-house capabilities and capacity, and also the capabilities and capacity of the service provider in the assignment. Then we compare it with the available in-house capacity. Can we do it in-house, or we have to outsource? Even if you have in-house capacity, there may be reasons why you should outsource or get it procured from the service provider. We'll discuss that further slide. What will be the eligibility criteria for the service provider for this procurement that is brought out? And finally, with all these three sections of the concept paper, we'll go for in principle administrative and budgetary approval authority as laid down in the schedule of powers in your organization. So as we have said, that it should be just. So as per the GFR, the General Financial Rule, the justification for procurement of services can, number one, there is an administrative policy decided by the department to outsource a specific class of service, or it is a non-core business, so we want to outsource. The second justification can that there is inadequate capability or capacity in-house by way of staff, management organization or organization structure, or technological material resources. If they are inadequate, then we'll have to definitely go outside to get these. We can also justify procurement of services from service provider on the basis of justification based on economy, speed, efficiency, more effective delivery. Another reason for justification can that we want to have a highly qualified service provider for high quality specialized service. For example, a aerial survey or the examination of foundation of a bridge on a river. So these are very highly qualified services. We need a highly qualified person, so we go outside, find a qualified service provider for them. We may also want to build knowledge and train our people or improve our in-house capacity. If we are having inadequate capacity, we can hire a service provider to train us or to show us how this is done, so that next time, having learned the process, we can do it. The fundamental principles for procurement of service as laid down in the GFR are that number one, first of all, the services should get justified per the slide we have discussed earlier, and it should be consistent with corporate. The services and activity schedule should be well defined. That means the scope of work, the description and time frame should be well defined. It is well defined because the government should not enter into a indeterminate liability. If it is well defined, our liability will definite. So in government procurement, we always try to have definite liability before we enter in procurement. Cost estimates should include all elements: personnel, material, equipment, miscellaneous overheads and profit. And it should also highlight any cost that the supervision of the service will or the counterpart team will be, so that an overview of available. And the engagement of the service provider should be economical, efficient to meet the bareness of service. For example, if you want to have only 2 trips of taxis in a day, you need not hire the taxi for the whole day. Or if you need the taxi for only 2 days in a week, you need not hire it on a monthly basis for it to lie idle. So the engagement should be very efficient to meet the bare necessities of requirement. All qualified service providers must get equal opportunity to participate in the procurement, and the selection process should be transparent with integrity and high standard. The next process step is the preparation of services due. Here, what does it include? First of all, give a detailed background of the origin of the service. What is your purpose and outcome statements, as in the concept paper? You can bring it out. And brief description, scope of service, contract period, and what type of contract or form of BOQ you are going. What are the facilities and utilities you will be providing at the site to the service provider, either free of cost or at charge. For example, if a facility management service provider is engaged, will you give him water free of charge? Will he have access to will he have room to him to store his stuff? All this has to be pre-decided and disclosed, so that there is a transparency in the procurement process. What are the statutory and contractual obligations in terms of licenses, safety, security requirements, labor laws, etc. nowadays have been codified into 4, and we'll discuss that detail later. The taxation requirement and the insurance. So because these will have cost implications, the service providers must know upfront in the beginning. What are the institutional arrangements for review of the work or the quality of the service performance? After all this decided, you start from the services outcomes backwards and break down the outcomes, outputs, and break down the outputs into several interrelated activities and sub-activities or the tasks. With this breakup, you prepare an itemized activity schedule with tabular form, which will go into your bid document later on. It lays down quantum, frequency, and the time frame, various activities and tasks to be performed, and what are the performance specifications, drawings, service level agreement indicators or KPIs for each of them. Then what labor or personnel schedule will be there, what is the requirement of different quantum of personnel, what should be their skills and capability, what will be the place of their service, how many shifts and frequency of utilized labor will be there, whether they will be required in 6-hour shifts or 8-hour shifts or more, say 12 hours. So all this to be given so that it can be priced properly by the bidder. What is the material schedule? What material will be required? How much will it be required per unit of manpower? And what is the specific? If there is any key equipment to be required, that has to be mentioned. For example, say in airport cleaning contract, a automatic floor cleaners on which the operator sits and it goes around. What will be the specification of that floor cleaner? What capacity it should have, what should be its performance parameters. All this will laid down, and how many such machines the service provider will have to provide this. After all these detailed, the final administrative approval and the financial approval is obtained. In the concept paper, it was only an in-principle approval for going ahead to prepare all these details. Now finally, we have final administrative approval, financial approval to go ahead for actual procurement. Now starts the third phase, that is the procurement planning phase, in which we decide the bidding system and the mode of procurement. Here, the government e-market portal called GEM portal, procurement of services from GEM portal is mandatory unless a non-availability is obtained from that portal. Services are normally procured in a single stage price-based procurement, unlike consultancy service, which may be in 2-stage with EOI and PQB. And in consultancy, maybe you will be using QCBS, quality cum cost based selection. However, in services, if there are stringent quality like in seismic survey, airborne data, we may go in for two-stage procurement or for select. Two stages, as we said, can be for highly critical and high quality service. In complex cases, we may have pre-bid conference. Normal procurement of services is similar to goods. It is by open tender, two-bid system, technical and financial for procurements above rupees 10 lakhs, that is 1 million. In limited tender below 10 lakhs, it can be a single bid instead of two bid if the service is not so complex, but at least 6 bidders should be invited in limited tender. We have to avoid splitting of the services to avoid open. Similarly, for procurements of less than 2.5 lakh, direct procurement by a comet by quotations from 6 unique bidders and recording a certificate of procurement, short process, small value service. Even smaller value procurement of less than rupees 25,000, direct procurement can be done without by recording a certificate. This type of procurement can be done for ad hoc repair of small quantity of document management or hiring of one-off or two-off taxi services. In rare cases, single source selection can be done, except rest of the processes like bidding, selection of successful bidder and award of contract is quite similar to the processes in other categories of procurement. So we will not go into it. As we discussed, you can come back to the channel Mastering Public Procurement. We will be putting up in future videos concerning contract management. Is also like other categories of procurement. We will have in future videos on this aspect also. We will not discuss the details here, but we will discuss the unique features of contract which are in the following slide. The first important unique feature of procurement of services is initiation. You have to get ready for the service provider to come and start its services. You appoint a counterpart manager, your own staff to supervise the execution of the service or doing the quality checks, performance standard checks, quality assurance and admeasurement of input or output. You have to prepare the facilities. You have offered to provide him room, the waters connection, electricity connections, etc. Inform all the concerned institutional parties, all the departments within your organization, security people, etc. about the service provider and introduce to them so that they get chance to come into get security clearance. Ensure advance payment is part of the contract. Provide due authorization, data and background materials that required for the service provider as per the. Then call the contractor and discuss with him and arrive at an understanding on the work plan he will follow, the methodology he will be following. He must have quoted contract, but clarity should arrive at. Then deployment plans for resource, how many personnel, what different types, at what location, put what are the equipments used, what are the materials storing for daily performance standards, how are they to be measured, the quality system, what are the service level agreement you will arrive at. We'll discuss the details of service in the next slide. So all this understanding has to be put down on paper so that there is no disputes in late. After doing all this, you issue a notice, proceed to the service provider and hand over. What is a service? When we are involved in procuring something intangible like a service, we have to be very clear what level of service we are going to get, scope of what quality will be available, what will be the responsibility of the service provider and the procuring agent, so that there is no and what are the expectations from the service element of the service level agreement. Will cover the scope, what are the service to be provided, and also very important, what type of services are not covered in, because many times dispute is on this, what is not, what will be the conditions of service, whether it will be 24/7, whether it will be off the office hours also they will available, whether they will tend to maintenance during the night. All these conditions have to be specific. Whether it will be bad weather also they will be expected to be available. What are the service standards? Say whether there will be 5% non-availability over a period of time. What is the allowed outage of service? What are the time frame of provision? Suppose a defect arises, how much time will you allow him to rectify and the responsible either. So these are the service elements, part of service level agreement. The management elements are how the performance standards will be, how the performance levels will be reported, whether it will be daily reporting, weekly reporting or hourly reporting, and what will be the remedy for service effectiveness, how the problems that arise will be resolved, how there will be an escalation procedure if the problem is not resolved at the execution level. Service level agreement may come up for review and revision if the conditions are changing under which the service provided, or if the change in frequency and procedures come. So this is the service level agreement, which is very important. Service procurement, this is sorely missed in many of the cases, and then there are quality complaints. Execution and monitoring also have unique, as we have already discussed. Measurement of inputs and outputs, this is the way you ensure you are getting what you are paying for, is a very important portion. It has to be a definite system of recording and measurement along with the service provider, and there should be no level of disagreement on the measure. All the service procurements undergo vary quantity, and you may want in a security system, say if you have hired security people, you may want suddenly heightened security because of some threat or some mishap which has occurred. You want him to send 100 more staff suddenly. So that is a variation. You will have to agree with, compensate. Ongoing monitoring of performance standard and quality assurance, on time, minute to minute performance monitored, so that get the quality service we are paying. Site management, like in works contract, is very, in most of the services, the service provider will bring his equipment, personnel, etc. to yours. It may not be in all the type of services. For example, when you hire a taxi, he brings his taxi and you use it, and he does not camp in your site. But even in taxi services, he may camp in your site, hire a fleet of taxis, say 20 taxis, he brings it to your factory, ask for a parking space, he is there, his drivers are always there. You may even provide him driver's room for the drivers to sit. So site management is very important. You have to ensure that the security aspect, the safety aspect of the site properly taken care of by the service provider. The labor codes, when the service provider's labor is on your site, there is a vicarious responsibility of the procuring agents to ensure that the labor codes applied with wages, industrial relations code, social security code, and operational or occupational safety, health and work code is honored by the service provider. Then he has to ensure that various government welfare schemes are available. There may be requirement of licenses, insurances, and environmental at the site. He has to. Another aspect, like in other categories of contract, which is not very unique, but the thing is, because the service provider providing you service at your, sometimes it may become necessary that you ask him to suspend because some accident has happened or some road has been closed off, flood. So you have to ask him to stop the work for some. So this is a unique feature of service. In service contract, there is a defect liability period. Suppose a standalone service person has delivered to you and he goes away, but there may be a period up to which, if a defect is noticed in the service, you can ask him to come back, verify it. Normally in long service periods is a 90-day period. It may vary. Liquidated damages for delays, delivery of services are also applicable in service contract like in other types of contract, but the percentage of liquidated damages per week is much less because of the complex of service. It is usually 0.1 instead of 0.5%. Similarly, there are damages for shortfall in performance, which is also sometimes 0.1% the defective service. Maximum limit is also put, say up to 10% of the contract cost damages. Another important feature of the services contract is that you have to take back the site after the contract is closed. You have to take your asset backs, whatever facilities you had provided, room, the connection or the water connection or the identification cards that you had given, they have to be. So this is the unique features and monitoring. So that is all probably we have to discuss in this. You will have further resources as we have mentioned earlier. First of all, to understand the concept that we have discussed today, I'll request you to go to the eProcure CPP portal of the central government and search for various services contract, see what type of services are being procured, what are the different types of BOQs there. So that will clarify things we have talked with. Then Finance Ministry has a manual on procurement of consultants and other services, for which link is given. You can understand a lot of procedures there. Then Finance Ministry, as I said, has issued a model tender document for non-consultancy, which can be downloaded and studied. We will also have videos on, we also had a video in general on development of these model tender documents. And you can also see my Mastering Public Procurement channel, for which link is given below. I request subscribe.